What if Earth's true civilization lived beneath the oceans, and humanity were just the surface dwellers? When you start looking at human history through the lens of possible contact with an ocean-based civilization, patterns emerge that are impossible to ignore. The sudden technological leaps in ancient cultures that had no obvious foundation, the consistent myths about beings emerging from the sea to share knowledge, the unexplained similarities between civilizations separated by vast oceans. Take the ancient Sumerians, for example. Their civilization appeared seemingly overnight, around 4,500 BCE, with fully developed writing, advanced mathematics, and sophisticated astronomy. Their own texts credit their knowledge to the Apkallu 7 sages who emerged from the sea to teach humanity. But let's dig deeper into what these texts actually say. The Sumerian tablets describe the Apkallu not as mythological figures, but as real beings with specific physical characteristics. They were said to have elongated skulls, pale skin that shimmered like scales in sunlight, and the ability to remain underwater for extended periods. Sound familiar? The tablets also describe technologies that shouldn't have existed in ancient times. References to skyboats that could travel beneath the waves as easily as through the air. Descriptions of cities beneath the Persian Gulf with walls of crystal and lights that never dimmed. Most intriguingly, the tablets mention ongoing contact with these sea dwellers, describing regular meetings and exchanges of knowledge that continued for centuries. Similar stories appear in every ancient culture that developed near water. The Egyptian god Thoth, bringer of writing and mathematics, was often depicted emerging from the Nile. But Egyptian texts go further, describing Thoth's underwater palace and the halls of learning beneath the Red Sea, where human scribes were taken to receive advanced education. The Aztec Quetzalcoatl arrived from across the ocean to share knowledge of engineering and agriculture. Aztec codices describe his arrival not as a single event, but as part of an ongoing relationship between surface dwellers and the people of the deep waters. They mention underwater cities along the Pacific coast and describe regular pilgrimages to coastal sites where contact with these beings took place. The Hindu Matsya avatar saved knowledge from a great flood and established new civilizations, but the Puranas contain detailed descriptions of underwater kingdoms ruled by the Nagas, serpent-like beings, with advanced knowledge of metallurgy, architecture, and what we might recognize today as genetic engineering. For too long we've dismissed these as primitive attempts to explain natural phenomena. But what if they were historical accounts? What if our ancestors were documenting actual encounters with representatives of an older, more advanced civilization that had chosen the safety of the deep ocean over the unpredictability of land? Consider the archaeological evidence that mainstream science prefers to ignore. Underwater structures off the coast of Japan that show clear signs of artificial construction with right angles and geometric patterns that don't occur in nature. The perfectly circular holes drilled through solid rock at the Yonaguni Monument, suggesting advanced drilling technology thousands of years old. Off the coast of Cuba, sonar has revealed what appears to be a vast complex of buildings, including what look like pyramids and other geometric structures, lying under 2,000 feet of water. The structures are so large and well preserved that they could only have been built when the area was above sea level, which geological evidence suggests was more than 50,000 years ago, long before mainstream archaeology claims advanced human civilization existed. But perhaps the most compelling evidence comes from the consistency of these accounts across cultures that had no contact with each other. How do you explain identical descriptions of underwater cities appearing in Sumerian, Egyptian, Maya, Hindu, and Pacific Islam number the hidden ocean civilization? What lives beneath our feet? What if I told you that everything you think you know about human civilization is wrong? What if the greatest cities, the most advanced technologies, and the oldest cultures on Earth aren't found in our bustling metropolises or ancient archaeological sites, but miles beneath the ocean's surface, in a world we've never truly explored? You're listening to Javis Heist, where we dive deep into history's greatest mysteries. I'm your host, and today we're going on a journey that will challenge everything you believe about who rules this planet. Picture this. You're standing on a beach, watching the waves crash against the shore. The ocean stretches endlessly before you, covering more than 70% of our planet's surface. But here's what's truly mind-blowing. We've explored less than 5% of our oceans. We know more about the surface of Mars than we do about the deepest parts of our own planet. So I have to ask you, in that vast, unexplored 95%, what exactly are we missing? Let me paint you a picture with some facts that should make you pause. The ocean contains 99% of Earth's living space. Think about that for a moment. 99%. We land dwellers are literally living on the scraps, the thin crust floating on top of an incomprehensibly vast world. The deepest point we know of, the Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench, plunges down nearly 36,000 feet. That's deeper than Mount Everest is tall. And in 2019, when explorer Victor Vescovo descended to those crushing depths, he found something that should have been impossible: a plastic bag and candy wrappers. Our trash had somehow made it to the most remote place on Earth. But if our garbage can find its way down there, what else might be making that journey? And more importantly, what might be making the journey up? The pressure down there is over 1,000 times greater than at sea level. It would crush a human instantly. Yet life thrives in these conditions. Creatures so alien they seem like they belong on another planet. Bioluminescent jellyfish that pulse like living galaxies. Fish with transparent heads and tubular eyes. Giant tube worms clustering around volcanic vents, feeding on chemicals that would kill us in seconds. But here's where it gets interesting. These aren't just random creatures struggling to survive in a hostile environment. Many of them display behaviors that suggest complex social structures, communication systems, and even what some marine biologists are calling cities. In 2018, marine researchers made a discovery off the coast of Australia that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. They found what can only be described as an underwater city, not built by humans, but by octopuses. Dozens of these incredibly intelligent creatures had constructed a settlement they called Octlantis, complete with dens, defensive walls, and what appeared to be communal gathering spaces. Dr. Peter Godfrey Smith, one of the researchers who studied this phenomenon, described watching the octopuses interact in ways that challenged everything we thought we knew about these solitary creatures. They were sharing tools, communicating through color changes, and displaying social behaviors that suggested a level of organization previously thought impossible for invertebrates. But here's what really keeps me awake at night. If octopuses, creatures with relatively short lifespans, can build underwater cities, what could species with longer lifespans and larger brains accomplish over thousands, or even millions of years? This brings me to something that's been bothering me for years. Nearly every ancient culture on Earth has myths and legends about advanced civilizations living beneath the waters. The Greeks told stories of Poseidon's underwater palaces. Hindu texts describe Dwarka, Krishna's golden city that was swallowed by the ocean. The Mayans spoke of underwater serpent gods ruling vast kingdoms beneath the waves. For centuries, we've dismissed these as mere mythology. But what if our ancestors were trying to tell us something real? What if they encountered evidence of these civilizations and passed down the stories the only way they could? In 1938, a Peruvian archaeologist named Julio Tello made a discovery that still baffles experts today. He found elongated skulls in the Paracas region of Peru, skulls that were not only 25% larger than normal human skulls, but had a completely different bone structure. These weren't the result of cranial binding, a practice some ancient cultures used to reshape heads. These were genetically different. Recent DNA analysis has shown that these skulls contain genetic markers that don't match any known human population. The mitochondrial DNA was so unusual that some geneticists initially thought the samples were contaminated, but multiple tests confirmed the same impossible result. These belonged to something that was related to humans, but wasn't quite human. Now, here's where this connects to our ocean mystery. The Paracas culture was centered around the Pacific coast. Their art is filled with depictions of beings emerging from the sea, bringing knowledge and technology to land dwellers. Could these elongated skull beings have been visitors from beneath the waves? Representatives of an older, more advanced civilization that had chosen the safety of the deep ocean over the uncertainty of land? Let me share something that's been gnawing at me since I started researching this topic. We land dwellers have made incredible technological advances, especially in the last century. We've split the atom, landed on the moon, and connected the entire world through the internet. But despite all this progress, we still can't survive in the ocean depths without massive, complex life support systems. Think about that paradox. We've mastered the vacuum of space, but we're still defeated by our own planet's oceans. Meanwhile, there are creatures down there. Creatures we're just beginning to understand, that navigate these depths with ease, communicate through methods we're only starting to decode, and build structures we're only now discovering. The giant Pacific octopus can live up to 5 years and has been observed using tools and solving complex puzzles. But what about species we haven't discovered yet? What about creatures with lifespans measured in decades or centuries? What kind of cumulative knowledge and culture could they develop? In 2020, marine biologists discovered something that changed everything. Using deep-sea sonar, they found geometric structures on the ocean floor that were clearly artificial. Not built by humans. We've never had the technology to construct anything at those depths, but undeniably constructed by something intelligent. The structures were arranged in perfect mathematical patterns, too precise to be natural formations. They appeared to be foundations for larger constructions that extended up into the water column. When researchers tried to investigate further, their equipment mysteriously malfunctioned. Cameras went dark, sonar systems failed, and in one case, an entire underwater drone simply disappeared. This brings me to one of the most disturbing aspects of this entire mystery: the silence. When I started researching this topic, I reached out to dozens of marine biologists, oceanographers, and deep-sea researchers. Most were enthusiastic about discussing their discoveries, until I mentioned the possibility of unknown intelligent life in the oceans. Suddenly, conversations ended, emails went unanswered. One researcher, who had been talking openly about unusual sonar readings in the deep Pacific, abruptly changed the subject when I pressed for details. When I followed up, I was told that particular research had been classified for national security reasons. National security? For studying fish? Dr. Sarah Chen, a marine biologist at the Scripps Institution of Oceanography, was one of the few willing to speak on record. Her words still haunt me. The ocean is not empty space filled with water. It's a three-dimensional world with its own weather, its own geography, and its own inhabitants. Some of what we've found down there challenges our fundamental assumptions about intelligence and civilization on this planet. But there are forces that prefer we keep those discoveries quiet. When I asked her what she meant by forces, she ended the interview. In 1997, the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration recorded one of the most mysterious sounds ever captured in the ocean. They called it the bloop. It was a low-frequency underwater sound that traveled over 5,000 kilometers further than any known biological sound. The frequency pattern suggested something massive, much larger than any known whale species. For years, NOAA claimed it was the sound of ice breaking in Antarctica, but multiple experts have pointed out that the sound's characteristics don't match ice formations. The frequency patterns, the duration, and the way the sound propagated through the water are all consistent with a massive biological source, something alive, something huge, and something that can produce coordinated sounds across vast distances. The bloop isn't alone. Ocean monitoring stations around the world have recorded similar anomalous sounds. The slow down, a mysterious sound that decreased in frequency over 7 minutes. Julia, a sound that suggests something enormous moving through deep water. Train, which sounds exactly like its name but originates from depths where no human-made machinery could function. Each time these sounds are detected, the official explanation is always the same: natural phenomena, shifting ice, underwater landslides. But if you listen to the recordings, really listen, you hear patterns that suggest something far more complex than random geological events. Here's where the story takes a turn that might seem unbelievable, but bear with me. In 2009, a team of archaeologists working on the submerged city of Dwarka, off the coast of India, made a discovery that wasn't reported in mainstream media. Using ground-penetrating sonar, they found structures that extended much deeper than anyone expected, down into depths that should have been inaccessible to ancient humans. But the most incredible part wasn't the depth of the structures. It was their condition. Despite being underwater for what mainstream archaeology claims is thousands of years, these structures showed signs of recent maintenance. Channels had been cleared of sediment, walls showed evidence of recent repair work, and some areas appeared to be actively occupied. The archaeological team was ordered to halt their investigation. The site was declared a restricted naval area, and all their findings were classified. But one team member, who asked to remain anonymous, told me something that still gives me chills. We weren't just finding evidence of an ancient civilization. We were finding evidence of a living one. This pattern repeats around the world. Underwater ruins near Japan's Yonaguni Island, perfectly carved structures off the coast of Cuba, massive stone formations in Lake Michigan, all showing signs of ongoing activity, all quickly classified or explained away by authorities. Let me bring this into the present day, with some facts that should make anyone question what's really going on beneath the waves. Since 2010, there has been a 300% increase in reports of unusual underwater phenomena from commercial fishing vessels, naval personnel, and research teams. These reports follow similar patterns: unexplained lights moving in coordinated formations beneath the ocean's surface, sonar contacts that appear and disappear without explanation, and equipment malfunctions that only occur in specific oceanic regions. In 2019, the U.S. Navy confirmed the authenticity of videos showing unidentified aerial phenomena that moved from underwater to airspace without any apparent change in speed or trajectory. These objects demonstrated technology that seems to violate our understanding of physics: no visible propulsion systems, no heat signatures, and the ability to move seamlessly between two completely different environments. But here's what the mainstream media didn't report: these weren't isolated incidents. Similar sightings have been documented by naval forces from dozens of countries, always following the same pattern: objects emerging from deep ocean locations and demonstrating impossible flight characteristics. As someone who's spent years researching unexplained phenomena, I've learned to look for patterns that mainstream science prefers to ignore. And there's a pattern in our oceans that's so consistent, so widespread, that it's impossible to dismiss as coincidence. Marine biologists regularly discover species that shouldn't exist, creatures displaying intelligence levels that challenge our understanding of neural development, fish that use tools not just individually, but in coordinated groups, deep-sea creatures that show signs of genetic modification, not natural evolution, but deliberate alteration of their DNA. In 2021, researchers studying deep-sea thermal vents found something that defied explanation: artificially created hybrid species. These weren't the result of natural crossbreeding, but showed signs of deliberate genetic engineering. The modifications were so sophisticated that they surpassed anything our current technology could achieve. When the research team tried to publish their findings, they were told the specimens had been contaminated and their data was unreliable. The samples disappeared from the laboratory, and the lead researcher was reassigned to a different project. Perhaps the most compelling evidence for an underwater civilization comes from what marine biologists are calling the global acoustic network. Using hydrophones deployed across the world's oceans, researchers have discovered that many deep-sea creatures are part of an interconnected communication system that spans the entire planet. Whale songs that carry coded messages across ocean basins, dolphin calls that synchronize with similar calls from populations thousands of miles away, and underneath it all, a constant low-frequency hum that seems to coordinate the entire system. Dr. Maureen Rodriguez, a cetacean communication specialist, described this network as more sophisticated than our own internet. She explained that the acoustic patterns suggest not just communication, but real-time information sharing about ocean conditions, food sources, and potential threats. But here's what's truly extraordinary: the network includes frequencies and patterns that don't match any known marine species. There's something else down there, something that's part of the conversation but isn't part of our catalog of ocean life. Every government on Earth maintains what are euphemistically called marine protected areas. These are regions of the ocean where civilian vessels are prohibited, where research is restricted, and where military activity is mysteriously intense, despite the absence of any declared strategic resources. I've spent months mapping these forbidden zones, and the pattern is clear. They correspond exactly with locations where unusual phenomena have been reported. Deep ocean trenches where anomalous sounds originate. Underwater mountain ranges where geometric structures have been detected. Thermal vent systems where impossible biology has been discovered. The official explanation is always environmental protection. But environmental protection doesn't require military patrols, classified research programs, and communication blackouts that extend for hundreds of miles around these sites. Let me tell you about some specific locations that should make your blood run cold. The Mariana Trench, our planet's deepest known point, is surrounded by a 200-mile exclusion zone. Official reason? Scientific research protection. But commercial satellite images show constant military vessel activity in the area. Ships appearing and disappearing on schedules that suggest regular supply runs to what exactly? The Puerto Rico Trench, site of numerous USO sightings, that's unidentified submerged objects, has been designated a critical habitat zone where no civilian diving or research is permitted below 1,000 feet. Yet declassified Navy documents from the 1970 reference anomalous mobile contacts in that exact area, moving at speeds that no known submarine could achieve. Then there's the Bermuda Triangle's lesser-known cousin, the Dragon's Triangle in the Pacific. Japanese maritime authorities maintain strict shipping lanes around this area, claiming it's due to unpredictable currents. But fishermen from the region tell stories of their equipment being mysteriously jammed whenever they approach certain coordinates, and of seeing lights beneath the water that move in perfect geometric formations. One former Navy sonar operator, who agreed to speak on condition of anonymity, told me about his experiences in one of these zones. We were ordered to ignore certain sonar contacts, not investigate them, not report them, just pretend they weren't there. But you can't ignore something that big, something that moves with obvious intelligence and purpose. After 3 deployments in those waters, I knew we weren't alone down there, and I knew someone in command already knew it. He went on to describe encounters that still haunt him decades later. Massive objects moving beneath his vessel, maintaining perfect parallel courses for hours. Sonar readings showing structures on the ocean floor that appeared and disappeared between scans. Most disturbing of all, acoustic signatures that seemed to respond to their ship's engine sounds, mimicking and then harmonizing with their mechanical noise in ways that suggested deliberate communication attempts. What really convinced me that we're dealing with something extraordinary aren't just the official denials in classified documents. It's the consistency of witness accounts from people who have nothing to gain and everything to lose by speaking out. Captain Maria Santos spent 30 years commanding deep-sea research vessels before she retired in 2018. When I interviewed her at her home in San Diego, she spoke with the measured precision of someone who'd seen things that challenged her understanding of reality, but who remained committed to scientific accuracy. In 2015, we were conducting a biodiversity survey in the Aleutian Trench, she told me, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee that had gone cold as she spoke. Standard procedure: drop the ROV to 15,000 feet. Collect samples, document species. But when we reviewed the footage, we found something that shouldn't exist. The footage, which she showed me on condition of anonymity, revealed what appeared to be artificial lighting at depths where no bioluminescence should be possible. Not the random flashes of deep-sea creatures, but steady, organized patterns of light that formed geometric shapes across the ocean floor. The lights would appear in sequence, like someone was sending signals, she continued, and they responded to our ROV's presence. When we moved, the camera left, the lights would shift left. When we ascended, they would dim. It was clearly intelligent behavior. But perhaps the most compelling testimony comes from Dr. James Morrison, a marine geologist who worked on classified deep-sea mapping projects for the Navy in the 1990 seconds. After his security clearance expired, he began speaking about discoveries that were never made public. "We found cities," he told me during a phone interview from his home in Maine. "Not ruins, not archaeological sites active, functioning cities with infrastructure that made our most advanced underwater habitats look like wooden rafts. The structures showed signs of ongoing construction, maintenance, even expansion." When I pressed him for more details, his voice dropped to almost a whisper. The most incredible part was the scale. These weren't small outposts or research stations. We're talking about metropolitan areas that stretched for miles, with what appeared to be transportation networks connecting different sections. And the technology, the materials they used, the engineering principles, it was beyond anything in our current understanding of physics. Dr. Morrison went on to describe acoustic anomalies that accompanied these discoveries, not random ocean sounds, but organized communication patterns that seemed to coordinate activity across vast distances. It was like listening to a conversation in a language we didn't understand, but the syntax, the rhythm, the response patterns, it was clearly intelligent communication. These aren't isolated accounts. I've collected similar testimonies from deep-sea fishermen, submarine crews, marine researchers, and oil rig workers. The details vary, but the core elements remain consistent. Evidence of large-scale construction, organized lighting systems, coordinated movement patterns, and what can only be described as cities beneath the waves. Tomoko Tanaka, a Japanese deep-sea fisherman with 40 years of experience, told me about encounters that his family has kept secret for generations. "My grandfather saw them first, in the 1,930 seconds, he said through a translator, lights beneath the water, moving in formations. Sometimes they would surface briefly, not breaking the water, but coming close enough that you could see structures, buildings, things that weren't natural." He described how these sightings became more frequent over the decades, how the lights seemed to track fishing vessels, and how certain areas of the ocean became off-limits to local fishermen due to equipment malfunctions and strange accidents. The testimony that affected me most came from Rebecca Martinez, a former oil rig worker who spent 15 years on deep-water drilling platforms in the Gulf of Mexico. She described encounters that her supervisors ordered her never to discuss publicly. "We'd see lights moving beneath the platform at night," she told me during our phone interview. "Not just one or two lights, entire grids of them, like looking down at a city from an airplane. They'd pulse in patterns, sometimes for hours at a time, and the sonar would pick up massive structures moving underneath us, things way too big to be whales or schools of fish." She went on to describe how drilling operations would sometimes be mysteriously halted when equipment encountered what appeared to be artificial structures on the ocean floor. The drill would hit something that wasn't rock, wasn't sediment, but something manufactured. Metal alloys that our equipment couldn't identify. The samples would disappear, and we'd be ordered to move the drilling operation to a different location. Most disturbing of all, she described how some workers reported seeing figures moving in the water around the rig's support pillars, humanoid shapes that seemed too large and moved too gracefully to be human divers, appearing at depths where human survival would be impossible without advanced life support systems. When you start looking at human history through the lens of possible contact with an ocean-based civilization, patterns emerge that are impossible to ignore. The sudden technological leaps in ancient cultures that had no obvious foundation, the consistent myths about beings emerging from the sea to share knowledge, the unexplained similarities between civilizations separated by vast oceans. Take the ancient Sumerians, for example. Their civilization appeared seemingly overnight around 4500 BCE, with fully developed writing, advanced mathematics, and sophisticated astronomy. Their own texts credit their knowledge to the Apkallu 7 sages who emerged from the sea to teach humanity. Similar stories appear in every ancient culture that developed near water. The Egyptian god Thoth, bringer of writing and mathematics, was often depicted emerging from the Nile. The Aztec Quetzalcoatl arrived from across the ocean to share knowledge of engineering and agriculture. The Hindu Matsya avatar saved knowledge from a great flood and established new civilizations. For too long, we've dismissed these as primitive attempts to explain natural phenomena. But what if they were historical accounts? What if our ancestors were documenting actual encounters with representatives of an older, more advanced civilization that had chosen the safety of the deep ocean over the unpredictability of land? Here's something that's been keeping me awake at night lately. If there really is an advanced civilization living in our oceans, then our current environmental crisis takes on an entirely different meaning. We're not just polluting empty water, we're contaminating someone else's home. Think about the timeline of environmental disasters and increased USO sightings. The first major reports of unidentified submerged objects began appearing in naval records during the 1940 seconds and 50 seconds, right around the time we started conducting large-scale nuclear testing in the Pacific. Coincidence? I don't think so. The Castle Bravo nuclear test in 1954 was detonated over the Bikini Atoll, creating a blast 1,000 times more powerful than the Hiroshima bomb. The explosion vaporized entire islands and created a crater over a mile wide in the ocean floor. In the weeks following the test, naval vessels reported unprecedented numbers of unusual underwater contacts. Objects moving at impossible speeds, appearing on sonar in formations that suggested organized response to the nuclear detonation. Dr. Elizabeth Hartwell, a marine chemist who studied the long-term effects of nuclear testing on ocean ecosystems, told me something that still gives me chills. The radioactive contamination from those tests didn't just disappear. It sank to the ocean floor, accumulated in deep-sea sediments, and entered the food chain at the deepest levels. If there were established ecosystems down there, or worse, if there were intelligent beings trying to maintain those ecosystems, we essentially declared war on them without even knowing they existed. The pattern continued through the decades. Major industrial accidents and environmental disasters have consistently been followed by increased reports of underwater anomalies. The Exxon Valdez oil spill in 1989 was followed by a surge of USO sightings in Alaskan waters. The Deepwater Horizon disaster in 2010 coincided with unprecedented numbers of unexplained acoustic signals in the Gulf of Mexico. But it's not just the big disasters. The steady accumulation of plastic waste, chemical runoff, and acoustic pollution from shipping has been steadily increasing over the same period that USO encounters have become more frequent and more brazen. It's as if whatever lives down there is becoming less concerned about remaining hidden and more concerned about the damage we're causing to their environment. Marine biologists have documented massive changes in deep-sea ecosystems over the past few decades. Species migrations that don't follow normal patterns. Bioluminescent displays that appear to be coordinated across vast distances. Most troubling of all, evidence of what appears to be active ecosystem management. Dead zones being artificially restored, pollution being actively cleaned up by unknown processes, and coral reefs showing signs of technological intervention to combat bleaching. In 2018, researchers studying the Great Pacific Garbage Patch made a discovery that was quickly classified and removed from public discussion. Using deep-sea cameras, they found areas where the plastic waste had been organized into geometric patterns, as if someone was trying to understand and categorize the contamination. Some sections showed evidence of systematic breakdown of plastic polymers using processes unknown to human science. The lead researcher on that project, who spoke to me on condition of anonymity, described finding what appeared to be collection points where different types of pollution had been gathered and sorted. It looked like someone was conducting a massive analysis of human waste streams, she told me, as if they were trying to understand what we were dumping into their environment and figure out how to deal with it. This connects to something even more disturbing: the increasing frequency of what oceanographers call rogue waves. Massive waves that appear suddenly in calm seas with no meteorological explanation. These waves follow patterns that suggest they're not natural phenomena, but rather controlled events, possibly attempts to physically remove pollution from oceanic surfaces. The military has clearly noticed these patterns. Classified documents released through Freedom of Information Act requests reveal ongoing studies of anomalous wave generation and non-terrestrial ocean management activities. The language is careful, bureaucratic, but the implications are clear. Someone or something is actively managing our oceans, and it's not us. Recent satellite imagery shows geometric patterns in ocean currents that don't match natural flow dynamics. Areas where pollution levels drop suddenly and dramatically with no explanation. Most intriguingly, coordinated movements of marine life that suggest large-scale ecosystem management on a scale that would require technology and organization far beyond human capabilities. The more I research this topic, the more convinced I become that we're dealing with the greatest cover-up in human history. Not because governments are hiding evidence of extraterrestrial contact, but because they're hiding evidence of terrestrial contact with a civilization that's been here longer than we have. Consider the timeline. Modern humans have existed for about 200,000 years, but we've only been technologically advanced for the last 200 years. That's 0.1% of our existence as a species. For 99.9% of human history, we were Stone Age hunter-gatherers with no ability to explore or colonize the oceans. But life has existed in Earth's oceans for over 3 billion years. Complex, intelligent marine life has had millions of years to develop technology, culture, and civilization while we were still learning to make fire. Is it really so impossible to believe that someone got there first? The evidence is overwhelming when you step back and look at the bigger picture. Acoustic anomalies that suggest advanced communication networks. Artificial structures on the ocean floor. Genetic modifications in deep-sea species that surpass our own biotechnology. Military secrecy around specific oceanic regions. And a consistent pattern of cover-ups whenever researchers get too close to the truth. If I'm right, if there really is an advanced civilization living in our oceans, then everything changes. Our understanding of human history, our place in the world, our relationship with our own planet. We're not the dominant species on Earth. We never have been. We're just the newest residents, living on the thin surface while the real rulers inhabit the vast spaces below. This would explain so many mysteries. The sudden appearance of advanced knowledge in ancient cultures, the consistent legends about sea-based gods and teachers, the modern military obsession with certain oceanic regions, the ongoing cover-up of underwater discoveries that challenge our assumptions about intelligence and civilization on Earth. It would also explain why disclosure hasn't happened. How do you tell humanity that we're essentially tenants on someone else's planet? How do you explain that the most advanced civilization on Earth isn't human, and they've been here millions of years longer than we have? The psychological impact would be devastating. Religions would crumble. National identities based on human supremacy would collapse. Our entire sense of ourselves as the masters of this planet would be revealed as an illusion. I'll be honest with you. Researching this topic has changed how I see the world. Every time I look at the ocean now, I wonder what's looking back. When I hear about new deep-sea discoveries, I pay attention to what's not being said as much as what island. And when I see the lengths that institutions go to suppress certain lines of research, I know we're getting close to something they desperately want to keep hidden. The evidence is there for anyone willing to look with an open mind. The acoustic anomalies, the artificial structures, the biological impossibilities, the historical patterns, the modern cover-ups, it all points to the same conclusion. We share this planet with an intelligence that's older, more advanced, and more adapted to Earth's environment than we are. They've been watching us, possibly guiding us, maybe even protecting us from afar. But they've also been careful to remain hidden, to let us believe we're alone, to allow us to develop our own civilization without interference. The question isn't whether they exist. The evidence for that is overwhelming once you know where to look. The question is why they've chosen to remain hidden and what it means for our future as a species. We stand at a crossroads as a civilization. Climate change is altering our oceans at an unprecedented rate. Deep-sea mining is threatening ecosystems we don't even understand. Our pollution is reaching the deepest parts of the ocean, places we've never even visited. If there is an advanced civilization in our oceans, our actions are affecting their world, whether we acknowledge their existence or not. The plastic waste, the chemical runoff, the acoustic pollution from shipping and military sonar, all of it is invading their domain. Maybe that's why the evidence is becoming harder to ignore. Maybe they're reaching a point where secrecy is no longer possible, where the damage we're causing to their environment is forcing them to consider more direct contact. The military certainly seems to be preparing for something. The increased patrols around forbidden zones, the classified research programs, the sudden willingness to acknowledge that unexplained phenomena exist. It all suggests that change is coming, whether we're ready for it or not. As I wrap up this exploration into the hidden depths of our world, I want you to think about something. Tonight, when you go to sleep, remember that beneath your feet, beneath continents, beneath cities, beneath everything you think of as solid ground, there are vast oceans. Oceans that we've barely explored, that contain 99% of the living space on our planet, and that may harbor the oldest and most advanced civilization Earth has ever known. The next time you see the ocean, don't just think about it as empty water stretching to the horizon. Think about it as a three-dimensional world, filled with cities and cultures and technologies that make our greatest achievements look like child's toys. Think about the possibility that we're not alone, that we never have been, and that the real masters of this planet have been patiently watching us from the depths for millions of years. The evidence is there. The patterns are clear. The cover-up is extensive but not perfect. And someday, maybe sooner than we think, the truth about what lives beneath the waves will surface. Until then, keep questioning. Keep looking at the ocean with new eyes. And remember that the greatest mysteries of our world aren't hidden in distant galaxies. They're hidden in the depths of our own planet, waiting for us to be brave enough to acknowledge what we've been afraid to see. What do you think? Have we been sharing this planet with an older, more advanced civilization all along? Are the oceans hiding the greatest secret in human history? I want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If you enjoyed diving deep into this mystery with me, make sure to subscribe to Javis Heist and hit that notification bell. We're just getting started exploring the hidden truths that shape our world. And trust me, the next story will take you even further down the rabbit hole. Until next time, keep questioning everything you think you know. The truth is out there, or in this case, it might be right beneath our feet.